Hi, my name is Nadine Ibrahim and I'm a champion. Hosting a roundtable session on gender equitable storytelling powered by CC Hub. I'm very excited to speak with the industry professionals that we have today. I'm excited about the conversations we're going to have. I'm hoping it will be very fun and engaging. The participants for today should be expecting a very fun and engaging conversation about gender equitable storytelling and how it's impacted their work and also how they're telling their stories.
In an industry where stories shape culture, Nadine Ibrahim is intentional about what and who gets seen. As the founder of Nyla Media, she understands that storytelling is more than entertainment. It is power. It decides whose humanity is centered, whose complexity is explored, and whose voice is amplified. Through filmmaking, Nadine pushes beyond stereotype. Her work, like Beyond the Veil, does not flatten women into tropes or side characters. Instead, she creates narratives where women are layered, ambitious, flawed, resilient, and fully human.
You literally put something online and you don't know how far it travels. So representation is very important. Influencing is very important. When we now talk about gender equitable storytelling, and this is something that I'm also constantly thinking about, and I want to throw it to everyone, we talk about, not being stereotypical with our characters. Femi mentioned that as well. But what if sometimes you want to tell a story about somebody that is stereotypical in a sense? Because the characters that we create are from people all around us. We're inspired by what we see, the people we talk to. And so how do you tell a gender equitable story but still be true to the character that you're trying to create?
I have a character, one of our most popular characters is a girl named Olive, and she started off almost as a stereotype. And it was after the first episode of that series that when it came out, we had people like, oh, Olive seems like she's so perfect. And I immediately just went back to the drawing board because I never want to tell a perfect character. So we started to introduce her flaws in the least obvious ways that we could, and just like, take a second look, this character is not as perfect as you think. And we now start to see Olive make small gaffes to big catastrophic gaffes and mistakes. And at some point, it's like, okay, we're starting to get a handle on telling characters who can be annoying, who can be troublesome, who can be adventurous, who can be just a wide range of things that feel more human and real compared to, what we stereotypically see.
We've spoken a lot about being intentional and not being intentional. I think that's very interesting because Shima said something, and so did Jessie, about writing stories and first starting with a boy and then, converting to a girl. I had a short film, one of the first ones I did, called Tolu, and it was supposed to be a boy. And I had numerous conversations with my family. I'm always bouncing off ideas with my friends and family. And my brother said to me once, why? Because I was struggling to cast the boy. And I saw so many actors, but nothing was cutting it. And then he said to me, why don't you just get a girl? You're frustrating me. It's Lagos. Where am I going to get a girl to go into a canoe and go into the middle of nowhere? But I sat with it and I thought, actually, why not? It's so much more of a powerful story with this girl, a girl that's trying to justify why she can do what a man can do, what a boy can do as well. And in a way, that was a lesson for me. And with what Jessie was saying is with the stories that they're telling, that she's not even, it wasn't intentional for her to create these characters. And which is why I said the story writes itself. It's almost that you're just telling the story you want to tell. And in a way, whether you're being intentional or not, it happens, it writes itself, and you end up telling a very beautiful, empowering story. And I think that's really beautiful. And then on the other side of it is being intentional, like Aisha said. You're walking into a room because you're demanding the attention. You want to say, I am this person, this is what I'm here to say, I can say it. And with what you're saying as well, putting women in positions and platforms and on stages where they can answer and people can actually say, oh, this girl is smart, this girl knows what she's saying, it's a great time to be a champion right now because we're highlighting very important issues through the work that we do, and media is such a powerful tool. So being in a position where I can use my voice and my narratives and my work to, amplify certain voices is a great time to do this. That I did not know. I wouldn't say that I did not know, but I think like most of the women in the conversations we had this morning was saying about being more intentional about the stories and the messages that we're trying to put across in our films. I think that's something that I'm going to do as well. I've always had different themes in mind when creating the content that I create, coming from the North in terms of representing women and the struggles we go through. But I think more so now, I'm going to be more intentional about the way that I'm actually depicting certain women, and how that makes a difference to the audience and how the audience feels. I think that's also important as well. And for us being creatives in the industry, and I think why this roundtable was so important is because we've done the workshop with emerging filmmakers, but then we are the ones that are actually telling the stories. Now we have the platforms, we have the skills, we have the knowledge, we're teaching and we're impacting people. So what is it that we are telling with our stories? What opportunities are we creating as individuals in the spaces that we're working in to actually empower women, to empower men, to change the narrative? I know we're always talking about changing narrative, but then it is true. This is what we're doing, right? Whatever story you end up telling is what people are going to see, is what your audiences are going to watch. And so yes, I think it's important. It's important for people to have a vision of a woman with their baby at a round table, because it's possible. Because I don't have to be at home being a housewife. I can actually take 2 hours of my time and bring my baby. And bring my baby, and it works, and I think that is important. People seeing that things are possible through the stories we're telling, but also through us as individuals is very important. Every industry professional that is here today has had 1 or 2 works that have been of the themes of gender equitable storytelling. So I'm hoping that the engaging conversations that do happen today touch on the topics that they've touched, but then also enlighten everybody else that's here.
Most of my jobs, especially series that I do, are actually true life stories of what has happened in my presence while I was growing up. Like the story of Farin Jean. Anybody that knows what Oko, Chin, that's Iskokai, people that, it enters women a lot to the north. So we have the assumption that you're leaving your hair open in the north, or you're staying around a tree, if there's a tree, your house, all these things can enter the body easily. So there's a lady in front of my house. She is the most beautiful woman in my area there. So she has that issue a lot of it, that she goes and jump into a river anytime they enter her body. And she comes out every morning alive. Nobody knows her that well. So I tell that story in my series, Faranjini. And the lady is still around. I remember I sat down with her before with them. Tom was part of the story writers, them to write us. So I sat down with her, tell us our one side of the stories, how we got it to life. So in the north, they believe you have to wipe them with brow and read the Holy Quran, some verses, the Quran. That's when the jinn can come out with the lumens, but there are a lot of ways you can do that without beating someone's child. I would say, tell it in the story.
Well, I mean, starting out in this industry, being young and being a woman and being a director and a producer already in itself was just a formula for disaster for me on sets, because most of the people that we were hiring were men, but not because it was a choice to just be men, but because there weren't that many women that were trained in the field. Now we're seeing more and more women come up to say, they're gaffers, they're DPs. But back then when I started in 2017, there were hardly any women. And for me, being the boss on sets was such a challenging issue, because then it's a person of authority that's a female and that's younger than most people on set. So I would say if I was a man, even though I was younger, it would have been easier, I feel. So yeah, I would say being a director producer in that capacity, being a female and having to run a male-dominated crew is quite challenging.
So what's the challenge? They don't listen to you, or they would like, what's the...
Yes, I mean, there were certain sets that I would go on and I would speak to the DP and he would literally just do what he wanted to do. Or I would overhear conversations in the background of people saying, do I even know what I'm saying? You know? Or they, like in Pigeon House, they'd say something about you, but they don't think I understand. But they would basically be undermining me because I'm a woman and because I'm younger. Yeah, so I really had to, I guess, work extra hard to prove that actually I do know what I'm doing. And when these films come out, like you see, the content that I'm creating and you see that actually I have sense. Yeah.
She is deliberate about perspective. Who is holding the camera? Whose emotional journey anchors the plot? Who gets the final word? But her impact doesn't stop at the screen. Through Nyla Media's broader ventures, spanning branded storytelling, strategic communications, and digital platforms, she influences the ecosystem around film. She works with brands and organizations to ensure that the stories reaching audiences reflect equity, dignity, and nuance. She builds pipelines for emerging voices. Nadine mentors, collaborates, challenges rooms where decisions are made because that's just who she is. Because gender equity in storytelling isn't only about the protagonist. It's about who writes the script, who directs the scene, who finances the vision, who edits the final cut. Nadine understands that if we want equitable stories, we must build equitable systems.
So what we're doing here today is a gender equitable story workshop that highlights gender equity in storytelling and engages emerging filmmakers on the topic and how they can achieve telling stories in a gender equitable way. I want us to talk about the difference between gender equality and gender equity. Okay, so before we actually go in, how many people know what the difference between equity and equality? Don't be shy, because honestly, I didn't know before CC Hub. Okay, so before I did the workshop with CC Hub, I had an idea about what gender equity and equality was, but I didn't really understand it, right? So I think there's a difference between understanding it and just knowing what it is. So here, in terms of what we're talking about in terms of storytelling, gender equality is treating everyone the same. Example, giving equal screen time to male and female characters. Gender equity is giving people what they get to succeed based on their unique realities. For example, creating opportunities and support for women filmmakers who face systematic barriers, right? So why does gender equitable storytelling matter? Going back to gender equality and gender equity, right? With gender equality, I really could use that as an excuse to say, okay, well, we allow people to, we allow women and men to apply for the jobs, but they're really getting the job. So even if we have 50-50 in the room, and we actually looking at everybody as an individual or just as a group, right? So when you talk about gender equity, we're talking about the nitty-gritty and the individualization of everybody, right? So with gender equitable storytelling and why it matters, it reflects media and reinforces gender norms. Underrepresentation equals invisibility. Positive portrayals open minds and markets. Media influences perception, behavior, and policies. This is something we've spoken about through the music already. Women are often underrepresented of stereotypes, which we've also highlighted. And equitable storytelling humanizes all genders, challenges harmful norms, and opens the door for economic agency. Narratives are constantly changing, and there are always emerging filmmakers coming out, right? And people are trying to tell engaging and emerging stories. So this story workshop is important because we are shedding light on important topics that need to be addressed in our stories coming out today. There are a lot of stereotypes that need to be tackled, and I believe having spaces like this where creatives can have conversations about these themes and topics would help in shaping the new stories that come out in the next generation.
Hey, my name is Covenant Sisa. I am a storyteller and a gender advocate, and my expectations for this conference workshop is that I get a clear understanding of what telling stories through a gendered lens really means and how to infuse that into my work. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Benita Imohai. I'm here for the Gender Equitable Storytelling Workshop. I am a writer and storyteller, and I'm hoping that by the end of this, I would have grown as a storyteller and unlearned and relearned a lot of things.
I'm a very practical person, so when coming up with this workshop, I needed for it not to be me talking at people, but more of me engaging people and showing examples as a way of showcasing the themes that we're trying to explore. And so it was very important for me to look onto people that have done this work before, creatives that have done this work before, and showcase their work, but also engage the audience and the participants with conversations that spark the themes in these examples.
Enough of the women are actually naked on social media, and I did sad because the men are looking at these women, or the wrong women, not everybody. The wrong women are looking at these women like they are props, and women are like a commodity now. And I think this kind of songs, like the last one you put us, the Delamelo with the booty down, you will never see like women looking beautiful, like a mother in maybe achieving something or receiving an award in such a video. You see women shaking their bum left, right, center in that video. So it's just really sad that, that is what is entertainment for everyone now. Yeah.
There are a lot of creatives out there, and there are a lot of stories to be told. So no matter how many people are telling stories, your story is unique to you, and your voice is unique to you. And so just keep going out there and creating.
There was a time we were asked to record an 8th episode of Cook Show. Of Cook Show, and the presenter along the line that I had an attack. They go be so much to tell her, okay, Sabrina that's supposed to be presenting had an attack. I could hear from the phone the way she was sparking. Then I say, I resigned. I don't do. So like seriously, there are people that are in reality just like the what Brenda said. So like they just have to believe that people, the movies going out there are not movies to say something like this is going to happen or someone like this will come to your life. It's telling you the reality of some people you are living with that you don't know. You will see people like in pain. What is wrong with them? You don't know how to help. Most of them is from work. Like the type of courses they like have to deal with every blessed day. You just don't even know that what they are going through. Some people don't even sleep because they are thinking, if I sleep now, I will be late for work. I don't know what I'll want to make. Like it's just something, it's a reality we have to come back to and believe that it's happy and we must do something about it. Thank you.
We all have something we can relate to in this conversation that we've had, right? You all have the experiences through which we can actually point out and say, okay, yes, these songs we listened to or this situation that happened actually relates to this, right? And what the takeaway is from this is that the stories that we tell through our art matter. They shape the way people see gender roles. They shape the way people see power and respect and all sorts of important topics that we should be talking about, right? And so it's important for us to keep that in mind when we're actually going through our creative processes. I think if they leave inspired, that will be amazing. If they leave knowing something they didn't know before, that would also be amazing. But also what's important is the networking aspect of things. There are always creatives trying to network and create content with other and collaborate with other creatives. So I hope they were able to meet people that are like-minded and people that have the same stories that want to be told, and they can collaborate after this. Like we said at the beginning of this workshop, right? There are different stories that people want to tell, and you can't exactly put everything in a box. You can't exactly be an NGO trying to tell these kind of gender equitable stories and filling it up to the point where nobody wants to watch and we kind of lose interest, right? So we have to think about interesting ways that we could get our message across that doesn't sound too preachy, but is also entertaining and engaging. So your role as a storyteller is to choose whose stories you want to tell. So whose story are you trying to tell, and why are you trying to tell it? Elevating new voices. I think this is also important because we keep seeing the same voices play out in the media over and over again, but maybe new contributions could drive the narrative into a new direction. Somebody else was saying generation after generation, we're telling the same story. So if we actually lend voices out to the new generation, whether we think they're bubbleheads, Gen Z, Gen Y, I don't even know which one it is. But if we actually open our hearts and our minds and listen to people that are younger than us, people that are older than us, then we could potentially have new ideas.
I think the biggest change would be in the stories that we're telling. I think the stories would definitely evolve into something that we don't quite see, especially with our characters and stereotyping. I think, and I'm hoping, the more women get leadership positions, the more opportunities they will create. But not only create the opportunities, but create avenues for trading. Because you can give women opportunities, but if they don't know how to do the job, they're going to fail at it, and then they're not going to get the opportunity again. So I think the training aspect is very important. It's not just about giving a woman a platform, but also about empowering her so she knows how to do that and work well. Because if she doesn't do it well, we're not going to get it again. And it's just going to be a cycle of nonsense, we see. So yeah, for me, it's important to treat it about the opportunity, but it's also about training her to be able to live up to the expectations and that opportunity.
Hire inclusively, this talks about behind the scenes, right? So when you're creating your teams, who are you actually putting on your team? Who is in your corner? Are you actually thinking about representation? So this is also something you need to think about. Advocate for policy in your media network. So like we said, we don't want to be an NGO, preaching for certain themes. But if it's, if these are the stories you want to tell, then you tell them, right? It's about just being engaging in the way that you do. There are many films about advocacy that drive home certain points, but that are interesting. Please tell stories you can be proud of. So what stories do you want to tell? What stories do you want your kids to look at? What stories do you want when you're long gone for people to look back and say, this person created this story and they were trying to get this message across? It could just fine, and it's all fine if it's, all these blurred lines kind of vibes, like the stories the songs we listened to at the beginning. Okay, I'm coming. So some takeaways that I want to also shed light on in terms of what I learned from you guys today is the idea of the passive and active allies in characters, right? So we've spoken about the people like in what's the Hidden Figures, the guy that let her into the room. That's an active ally. But then you also think about the passive allies that are just behind the scenes, making conversations, being there so a conversation can be had. For instance, with Little Women, the guy is there, he's not really contributing to the conversation, but he's allowing for the character there to actually make her point. And in that scene alone, you've taken out what you need to take out from that. Just want people to laugh? Do you want people to drive home a message, or where they go home and actually think about certain things they want to change about themselves? These are things that I want you guys to think about as well. Lastly, dialogue is powerful. So I said this before, but I also want to make a point of it now. You can have a whole film that is just about comedy straight through, but you could have that one scene or one line of dialogue that is very powerful and people hold on to that for the rest of their lives. There are many films that do that, and I think if you study them enough, you could actually come up with really powerful narratives. So you could tell the stories you want to tell, but just think very deeply about the nitty-gritties of it. So, the details, whether it's in the fashion, in the costume, in the makeup, in the dialogue, just think about the details and the little things that make up a film as opposed to the whole thing. And maybe you might find, little gems in what you're creating there. Yes, I'm very happy with the way the events turned out, because the feedback after the events was amazing. People were inspired, people learned a lot, and most importantly, they were engaged throughout the conversations that we were having. So I'm very happy with the way it turned out.
How work sits at the intersection of creativity and strategy, where art meets access. And by occupying both spaces, Nadine expands what is possible for the next generation of filmmakers, especially women, navigating industries that have not always centered them. In every project, every partnership, every production, she asks a quiet but radical question. What does this story make possible? And in doing so, she moves gender equitable storytelling forward, not as a trend, but as a standard. This is why Nadine Ibrahim is our champion.